everybody. Member Medina will be joining us again shortly, but in the meantime, we're going to go ahead and begin to report out of closed session.
Are you ready, Madam Mayor?
Ready.
For items 5.1.1 through 5.1.4, direction was provided to the negotiators. For items 6.1.1 through 6.1.4, direction was provided to the negotiators. For item 6.2.1, which was labor negotiations, along with item 7.1, 7.1.2, also labor negotiation items, no reportable action. And for the last item, 7.2, I would defer to the mayor for reporting out.
Yes, for item 7.2.1, there were no reportable actions. So I will go ahead and adjourn this meeting. The time is 7:32, and I'll just wait to convene the next meeting until Member Medina joins us. She should be here shortly. So Sherry, when you're ready, I'll go ahead and call the next meeting to order.
Wait, you're doing a new meeting?
I know.
We're ready. Go ahead.
We are doing a new meeting, and for those of you who are tuning in, I see we have many attendees. This is, we're going to take care of a quick meeting before we get to the main event. This is the City of Emeryville as successor agency to the Emeryville Redevelopment Agency. The time is 7:35 p.m. Today is Tuesday, October 5th, and please bear with me as I read some introductory remarks. I'd like to state for the record that this meeting is being conducted by teleconference pursuant to newly enacted Assembly Bill 361. The city was previously complying with Brown Act orders issued by the governor, which were aimed at containing the novel coronavirus and which expired on September 30th. This new bill gives local agencies the authority to continue to host virtual meetings until January 1st, 2024, as long as California is under a governor-declared state of emergency. In order to continue meeting subject to this exemption to the Brown Act, the City Council must make the following findings by majority vote no later than 30 days after it starts using the exemption and every 30 days thereafter. And here are the findings. The first is that the legislative body has reconsidered the circumstances of the state of emergency and either 1, the state of emergency continues to directly impact the ability of members to meet safely in person, or 2, state and local officials continue to impose or recommend measures to promote social distancing. The City Council, Successor Agency, and MESA Board will consider whether to make these findings at their respective November 2nd, 2021 regular meetings, and at meetings at least every 30 days thereafter until the governor lifts the state of emergency. City Hall is open to the public during regular business hours, 9 to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. Please check with website for planning and building counter special hours or to make an appointment. The agenda states that the public may view the meeting that is being live streamed online and on ETV channel 27 and provide comment by submitting an online comment form, which will then be read into the record by staff. The comment form can be accessed by going to our main City of Emeryville website at emeryville.org and clicking on Council Agendas and Videos. Once there, you will see a link entitled Submit an Online Speaker Card. The public also has the option of participating in tonight's meeting via Zoom and may provide public comment during the meeting using the raise your hand feature visible on your screen. Or if you're calling in, press star 9. The Zoom call-in information was provided on the posted agenda as well as via e-notification and on social media. At this time, I will turn the floor over to our clerk. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Bouders?
Here.
Councilmember Medina?
Here.
Vice Mayor Donahue?
Here.
And Mayor Martinez.
Here. Next up, we have approval of the final agenda. Do I have a motion and a second?
I move approval. Second the motion.
I have a motion from Vice Mayor Donahue and a second from Member Bouders. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Bouders?
Aye.
Councilmember Medina?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Donahue?
Aye.
And Mayor Martinez.
Aye. Colleagues, are there any ex parte communications on this agenda? Seeing none, that'll bring us to public comment. Now is the time for public comment. Anyone who wishes to make comments related to items not on the agenda or on the consent agenda should have submitted your online speaker card by now. 3 minutes will be allowed for the city clerk to read your comments into the record. If you are participating in tonight's meeting via Zoom, please use the raise your hand feature visible on your screen, or if you're calling in, press star 9. At this time, I will ask the clerk whether any comments have been received or if any hands are raised.
No comment cards, but I see 3 hands raised.
Okay, I will remind those who are raising their hands that this is for the successor agency to the Emeryville Redevelopment Agency. So any comments that are in the purview of the successor agency will be welcome at this time. Clerk, I'll turn it over to you to manage the public comment portion.
Okay, Brian Donahue, you've been recognized.
Okay, I'd like to let the council know and the staff that are listening that at the last BPAC meeting, I attempted to speak, but I was not allowed to speak. There was another person that was allowed to speak, Robert Prince, and he works for Bike East Bay, and he's a popular person with the BPAC, and he was allowed to speak, but I wasn't. So I used my raise the hand feature. They didn't recognize it, so I flashed it, and then when they saw that I was flashing it, they said that I would be kicked out of the meeting for flashing the raised hand, and they did not permit me to speak. Later, I got a letter of apology, and I was told I could speak at the following BPAC meeting and save my comments. But due to an illness in my family, I wasn't able to make that meeting. So I was not able to speak at a BPAC meeting. It's a Brown Act violation. And I don't want to hear apologies. I just want to make sure that the Emeryville City Hall is accountable and transparent. And this kind of behavior is neither. So just so you know, I was not permitted to speak, and they apologized, and that's not good enough. There's no reason for that. Everybody knows that these meetings that are public is allowed to speak, especially if you let one person speak. You have to let unpopular people such as me speak. So unacceptable Brown Act violation. I don't want to hear a letter of apology. I don't want that. I just want you to observe and follow the Brown Act. That's all. Now
Speaker, I thought you were done and disallowed you. If you have 59 more seconds if you want to use them.
yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm just deferring now to Councilmember Medina, who can tell me what I just said is offensive and somehow untoward it. So go ahead, Councilmember Medina. And that's the end of my comments. Thank you very much.
Let's go ahead and complete the comment portion before we come back to council.
Okay. Okay, for Mr. Bukowski, I'm going to have to promote him to a panelist because his technology does not allow him to become. All right, go ahead. You have 3 minutes.
Okay, yeah. I just want to mention, first of all, I'm happy to participate in this meeting. And I just want to mention that I attempted to submit an online speaker's card and it didn't work. I filled out the information, but it just, the page wouldn't scroll down so I could push the submit button. So there may be some problem there. I tried it 3 times and it didn't work. So that's it. Thank you.
All right, one moment. All right, and Casey Farmer, you may now speak. You have 3 minutes.
Good evening, council members and members of the public. My name is Casey Farmer, and I serve as the Director of Community Engagement for Alameda County's 2021 redistricting effort. And I'm here with just a brief announcement this evening to make sure that you know that the county's redistricting process has launched. This is required every 10 years, as you know, after the census. And our Census 2020 results were very successful, and our county grew 11.5% over the last decade. So in our outreach to the public, we are seeking feedback in a variety of forms, generally to think about a number of questions to define your community of interest, which are part of the criteria that the supervisors will need to evaluate when developing districts. Some of these questions are, where is your community located? And to be specific with this geography, what connects your community economically, socially, and culturally? What is important to your community, such as shared goals or challenges? And what communities of interest nearby would you want to be conjoined with into a supervisorial district or not, and why? All of our information is required and is well documented on our website at redistricting2021.acgov.org. So there you will find our hearing schedule, multilingual materials, a short and shareable video, our contact information, as well as 2 engaging online mapping tools. The first allows members of the public to draw their communities of interest, and the second enables them to propose district maps for the supervisors to review. And our next public hearing is on Tuesday, October 12th, next week at 12 noon on Zoom. I believe that's all I wanted to share with you this evening. Thank you very much for your time. This is also for members of the public, and I'll repeat the website just for everyone's clarity: redistricting2021.acgov.org. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you, speakers. In response to the second speaker, I just want to make sure that the public is aware that if you're joining us via Zoom, you do have the opportunity to be recognized using the raise hand feature, or if you're calling in, please press *9 and we will make sure to recognize you. Member Medina, did you have a raised hand in response to one of our speakers?
Yeah, I wanted to share that the Brown Act violation was addressed by staff, and at our last BPAC meeting, what occurred was that they went through the cure process to correct the violation and are working to ensure that this does not happen again to members of the public.
Very good, thank you. That'll move us to item 6, which is our consent calendar. Colleagues, are there any questions or anything to pull from the consent calendar? If not, I'd be happy to entertain a motion and a second.
Move the consent calendar.
Second.
I have a motion from Member Bowders, a second from Vice Mayor Donahue. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Bowders,
Aye.
Councilmember Medina,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Donahue,
Aye.
and Mayor Martinez.
Aye. There are no action items on this agenda, so that'll bring us to adjournment at 7:47 p.m. of this meeting, which brings us to the main event. And as soon as the clerk tells me I'm ready, I will go ahead and call the regular city council meeting to order.
Okay, we're all set.
All right. Sherry, do I need to read the introductory remarks for this meeting?
No, I think you've you've done that enough tonight.
Okay, and we are all still here. So I am convening this meeting at 7:48 p.m. This is a City of Emeryville City Council meeting. Today is still October 5th, 2021, and we are all still here. As for approval of the final agenda, does anyone have a motion and a second?
I'll move.
I'll second.
I have a motion from Member Medina, a second from Vice Mayor Donahue. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Bowders,
Aye.
Councilmember Medina,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Donahue,
Aye.
and Mayor Martinez.
Aye. We have no special orders of the day. Are there any announcements of commission or committee vacancies?
Yes, I'll briefly announce later on this agenda, the council will make some decisions on how to fill our vacancy on the AC Mosquito Abatement Districts Board. We also have a vacancy on Budget Advisory Committee, one on Commission on Aging, and one on Public Art. We are opening up a recruitment this Friday, and the applications will be due on Monday, November 22nd, and with then appointments scheduled to be made to fill those vacancies on December 21st at your council meeting. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. We'll move us to council member special announcements and reports on meeting attendance. Does anyone have anything to report? No? I have one thing. I did attend the League of California Cities annual meeting, and my report is for resolution number 1, which was on online sales tax equity. We referred that to a policy committee. For resolution number 2, which was securing railroad property maintenance, that was passed by acclamation. And then what surprised me was that there were bylaw amendments that were slightly controversial, I guess, because we had to do that by paper vote. The bylaw amendments eliminated the National League of Cities board members, and they added to the board the directors of the equity caucuses. There was also cleanup language. The League of Cities is now being known as Cal Cities, so there was a bunch of cleanup language related to that change, but that did pass with a 2/3 majority. So that was the excitement for that day. And that brings us to the city manager's report. Is there anything to report today, Madam City Manager?
Madam Mayor, I have nothing, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Colleagues, is there any ex parte communication that you would like to report for this regular city council meeting? Member Bowders.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. On item 11.2 related to the appeal of the Art Center, I've had conversations with Orton Development, Rick Tejada Flores, I've received communications from Vicky Jo Soul, other artists in the community, and spoken, I'm forgetting Francis's last name, but I spoke to a woman who curates art centers and shows and has experience in developing art centers. So I've spoken to a number of artists.
Very good, thank you. Member Medina?
Yeah, so on the same item, received communication from More Development, Rick Tejada Flores, and Vicky Jo Soul.
Vice Mayor Donahue?
The same for me about Rick Tejada Flores and Vicky Jo Soul.
And for me as well, I received those same emails from Rick Tejada Flores, Vicky Jo Soul, and responses from ODI. So now it brings us to public comment for consent agenda items and for items that are not on the agenda. Now's the time for public comment. Anyone who wishes to make comments related to items not on the agenda or on the consent agenda should have submitted your online speaker card by now. 3 minutes will be allowed for the city clerk to read your comments into the record. If you're participating in tonight's meeting via Zoom, please use the raise your hand feature visible on your screen, or if you're calling in, press *9. At this time, I will ask the city clerk whether any comments have been received via the online comment card, or whether anyone has raised their hands to make audio comments.
No online cards, and I'm not seeing any raised hands. Oh, I take that back.
Very good.
Brian Donahue, go ahead.
Okay, I'm here to let the 5 of you know what your staff has been doing. And what they've been doing is counter to what you guys have stated about accountability and transparency. Specifically the city manager and also the public works department. So as you'll recall, several weeks ago, you voted to issue an abatement order, have public works department issue an abatement order to Lennar to cut down the trees along along Horton Street in association with the Sherwin-Williams project, Lennar being the developer. So it was unclear on the abatement order which trees specifically were ordered to be cut by you guys. So I had a question about that. Which are trees number 13, 15, and 18 included in the abatement order? It's a legitimate question. So I started asking the city manager and public works department, and I got a stone wall. No responses, email, no responses, no picking up with the phone, no phone calling, no returning of phone calls, no returning of emails. No one would answer that question. Which trees are in the abatement order? It's a legitimate question. People have a right to know about their public trees. Would not answer. Finally, after 4 weeks, I got an answer from the city manager that was not clear. Were trees 13, 15, and 18 in the abatement order? She answered, but it wasn't clear. So I asked the executive vice president of Lennar, who cut the trees down. You cut 13, 15, and 18. Was it your impression that that was on the abatement order? His name is Nathan Tuttle, and he told me, yes, that's his impression that that was in the abatement order. But then when I raised the question, he thought, well, there's a chance maybe that I shouldn't have cut those 3 trees. And those trees, in fact, should not have been cut because they did not have any of the characteristics of a nuisance tree that were elucidated in the abatement order. Those 3 trees were cut in error. So now my next question to the public works and to the city manager is why, since those 3 trees did not exhibit any of the characteristics required to designate them as nuisance trees, why were those 3 trees cut? And again, a stone wall. At the planning department, at the public works department and at the city manager's office, I used the word gag order. And I've been asking employees of the city, is there a gag order issued by public works employees by the city manager against me? And I found out, people who shall go nameless right now, yes, in fact, there's a gag order. Don't talk to Brian Donahue. Don't.
That's your time.
Your emails. Okay, that's Emeryville City Hall today. right now. Gag order.
All right, seeing
Thank you.
no other hands raised, that will conclude the public comment portion for this meeting. Of course, there will be time allotted for each item that we consider afterwards, after the consent agenda. So that brings us to item 10. These are the consent items. Colleagues, are there any questions on the consent calendar? Otherwise, I would entertain a motion and a second.
I'll move consent.
I second.
We have a motion from Member Medina, a second by Vice Mayor Donahue. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Bouders?
Aye.
Councilmember Medina?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Donahue?
Aye.
And Mayor Martinez.
Aye. And that will bring us to item 11.1. We have a public hearing. This is an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Emeryville amending the planning regulations at Title 9 of the Emeryville Municipal Code to allow cannabis manufacturing with a minor conditional use permit. Is there a staff presentation on this item?
Yes, I'm bringing up Charles Bryant, and I'll start his presentation in just a moment.
Very formal. Charles Bryant.
I almost said Charlie.
This is Charles Bryant. Can you hear me?
Loud and cool.
All right, thank you. As soon as Sherry brings up the presentation, I will begin.
One moment.
We'll start with something light tonight.
All right, is that visible to everyone?
Yes.
Can you make it a single slide?
Oh.
Okay, right now it's showing us the next slide.
Yeah, I have to change this setting every time. Okay, one moment, please. How's that?
That's
Yes.
good. Thank you. All right. Madam Mayor and members of the City Council, you have before you an ordinance to amend the planning regulations to change cannabis manufacturing facilities from a major conditional use permit to a minor conditional use permit. Next slide, please. So just by way of background, in 2017, the council passed an ordinance that amended the planning regulations to create the cannabis manufacturing use type and requiring a major conditional use permit for it. Then in 2020, the council passed another ordinance which expanded the zoning districts where cannabis manufacturing is allowed. As you may recall, on June 1st of this year, the council held a study session concerning obstacles to the expansion of the cannabis industry in Emeryville and directed that the planning regulations be amended to allow cannabis manufacturing with a minor conditional use permit. On August 26th, after holding a public hearing, the Planning Commission voted unanimously to recommend approval of such an amendment to the planning regulations. Next slide, please. Since the original ordinance, the Planning Commission has approved 4 major conditional use permits for cannabis manufacturing. They're listed here. The Planning Commission approved all 4 of these unanimously with no changes to the conditions that were related to the use. And since these approvals, staff has received no complaints about any of these facilities. Next slide, please. The conditions of approval that were included in these use permits covered activities that were permitted and prohibited, future subtenants, cannabis consumption being prohibited on the site, hours of pickup and delivery, business to be conducted inside the building, and odor control. Staff is proposing that these conditions now be memorialized in the planning regulations so that they will automatically apply to any minor conditional use permit unless they are modified as part of the approval. Next slide, please. So there's 2 reasons that cannabis manufacturing is currently considered a major conditional use permit, and therefore we need to make 2 changes to the planning regulations in order to undo that. Section 952205 states that it requires a major conditional use permit from the Planning Commission, cannabis manufacturing does, and this section would need to be modified to state that cannabis manufacturing can be approved with a minor conditional use permit from staff. Secondly, section 92701 lists cannabis manufacturing as a use of special concern, and section 97503A2 states that uses of special concern can never be approved with a minor conditional use permit. So section 97503A2 would need to be modified to state that cannabis manufacturing can be approved with a minor conditional use permit, although it would remain a use of special concern, but all other uses of special concern would still require a major conditional use permit. Next slide, please. These are the findings that must be made in order to approve an amendment to the planning regulations. The Planning Commission and staff feel that these findings can be made in this case. Next slide, please. Concerning environmental review, this is not a project as defined by CEQA, and even if it were, it would be exempt under the so-called common sense exemption. Next slide, please. The next steps are that you are holding a public hearing on this proposal tonight, October 5th, and assuming you pass it on first reading, it will come back for second reading and final passage at your next meeting on October 19th. If it is passed at that time, it would then take effect in 30 days on November 18th. Next slide, please. So the recommendation is that you introduce the ordinance after a motion to read by title only, take public testimony regarding the ordinance, and then adopt the first reading of the ordinance. That concludes my report, and I'd be happy to respond to any questions.
Thank you, Charlie, for the brief report. Colleagues, are there any clarifying questions? No, I think this is pretty clear. I would entertain a motion to read by title only.
Oh, the public hearing?
Well, we open the public.
Sorry.
Yeah, after, we could take this motion first.
I'll make a motion to read the ordinance by title only.
I'll second it.
We have a motion by Member Bowders, a second by Member Medina. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Bowders?
Aye.
Councilmember Medina?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Donahue?
Aye.
And Mayor Martinez.
Aye. And Madam City Attorney, please read by title.
Ordinance of the City Council of the City of Emeryville amending the planning regulations at Title IX of the Emeryville Municipal Code to allow cannabis manufacturing with a minor conditional use permit. CEQA status, not a project under Public Resources Code Section 21065 and Common Sense exemption at CEQA Guidelines Section 15061B3.
Very good. And now the time is 8:03 p.m. and for Sherry's benefit, I will use my gavel to open the public hearing. At this time, I will ask the city clerk whether any comments have been received via the online comment card or whether anyone has raised their hand to make audio comments. And I'll remind those of you joining us via Zoom, just use the raise hand feature in Zoom, or if you're calling in, press *9 and I will be glad to recognize you.
There are no online comment cards at this time, and I see one raised hand.
Very good.
Go ahead, please.
Yeah, the Public Works Director, Charlie Bryant, just made a misstatement when he said that the city has received no complaints about any of the cannabis dispensaries. In fact, I have made a complaint about one of them. And I, in an email I sent to the city manager. So that's inaccurate. There has been at least one complaint that I know of, maybe perhaps more. But mine didn't make it to the status of being enumerated here tonight and for the purpose of this meeting. And I have to assume it's because I'm unpopular there at City Hall. And so, unpopular complaints are not going to be registered by the city, by the staff. That would be a Brown Act violation, because I did make a complaint, and so it's inaccurate what you're doing right now. I'm not going to go into what my complaint was here for purposes of this meeting because it's meaningless. I mean, you wouldn't respond, and so I don't know what to do. This is a sham, basically. The City Hall has gotten to the point now where, unpopular people are completely shut out, and it's completely, that's illegal. The government has to be accessible by all persons equally, and it's a basic government 101, and Emeryville just can't countenance that now. People that are critical of City Hall policies or personnel or, polity are just basically shut out now. And you can recall what I just said about my questions about the abatement order for the Lennar development. So, so unpopular people are just not countenanced by City Hall. And so it stands to figure that my complaint against a cannabis dispensary would not register as a complaint, and that it would be reported that there were no complaints here tonight. So there you go.
All right, and seeing no more hands raised at 8:07 p.m., go ahead and close the public hearing. And I'll respond to the speaker to let him know that the businesses that Charlie mentioned are not dispensaries, but the ones that would fall under cannabis manufacturing operations. And those are the ones whose permits we're considering the change to this evening. So bringing this back to council, colleagues, is there any discussion on this before we take a motion on the ordinance?
Or move to approve the ordinance.
Second.
I second.
Very good. We have a motion by Member Bowders, a second by Member Medina. If there's no further discussion, we'll go ahead and call the roll on this item.
Councilmember Bowders,
Aye.
Councilmember Medina,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Donahue,
Aye.
and Mayor Martinez.
Aye. That passes unanimously and brings us to item 11.2. This is an appeal by the City Council of Planning Commission's June 24th, 2021 denial of an amendment to the conditional use permit and design review for the redevelopment of the existing 30,000 square foot vacant building located at 4060 Hollis Street as an arts and cultural center, and 2 signs. Is there a staff presentation?
Yes, there is. Good evening again, Madam Mayor and council members. Before I begin my presentation, I would like to invite Chad Smalley to give a few introductory comments.
One moment, I will allow him to speak. Okay, there you are, Chad.
Thank you, Sherry. Thank you, Miru, and to Mayor and members of the City Council. This is Chad Smalley, and the Economic Development Housing Manager with the city. Just some brief background, really just recent history. This project is a joint endeavor of the city and Orton Development, the selected developer for the Arts Center. And the most recent history on this is that on September 15th of 2020, the City Council approved an ordinance for a lease disposition and development agreement for the development and operations of the Arts Center. And that lease disposition development agreement, or LDDA, was executed on October 22nd of last year. The LDDA, you'll recall, requires certain milestones be met prior to the execution of the lease with our developer partner and their construction of the Arts Center. And one of those conditions relates to a limit on the total construction costs for the project. And that limitation is intended to protect the long-term financial sustainability of the project operations. So as part of pursuing this requirement, a couple of factors converged. One is the construction costs were higher than anticipated and continue to increase. And the second was we were in the middle of a pandemic that it is still ongoing. And the pandemic has changed in material ways, the ways that people use space, commercial space. So this necessitated rethinking of the design to bring it within the construction cost limitations, and that led to a process discovery of additional operation efficiencies that could be possible through changes that were responsive to the budget and the pandemic pressures. The result from that was exterior changes that were substantive enough to require revision of the permit that had been granted by the Planning Commission for the project in August of 2020. And these changes were presented to the Planning Commission in June of 2021, and the Planning Commission denied that application. I'm going to hand it back to Miru now to pick it up from there and to present an overview of those changes and the Commission's action. Thank you.
Thank you, Chad. So as you can see, in terms of the background, the Commission approved the use permit and design review for the Arts Center lots there. And for the reasons Chad just talked about, there was a revised, a bunch of amendments to the project, which the Commission considered in June of this year and denied those amendments. The Council appealed the Planning Commission's decision to themselves on July 6th. Next slide, please. So in terms of the amendments or the changes to the proposals, there are just basically 5 main things. One is related to the sidewalk and trees. The 4 existing trees on Hollis Street would now be preserved, and the only improvement of the sidewalk would be removal of the existing curb cuts and replacement with new curb and gutter. In the second change were the signage. Original approval included 3 signs, one on 40th Street, one on Hollis, and one facing the parking lot. These have been reduced to 2, with the sign on 40th Street being eliminated. There are a few changes or substantial changes to the floor plan, and I will get to that in a minute as visually it's easier to follow. There were some deletions from the project. The main one was the cafe and the cafe annex, as well as the Hollis Street entrance has now been deleted. There were some additions to the proposal, and this included an outdoor gallery and an urban art wall on the east elevation, which faces the parking lot. Next slide, please. So this was the original floor plan that was approved, and I know it's not very clear, but you can, if you can trace the colors, what is going to happen is the blue is multipurpose and forum room, and the green is the co-working space. So that gets flipped. Next slide, please. So as you can see, it's flipped, and in terms of there is a reduction in, there's an increase in co-working space from about 1,500 square feet originally to about 5,500 square feet. There's also increase in number of studios from 18 to 23, and there's a minor increase in the forum size, and there's a minor decrease in the gallery space. In addition, there is a relocation of the entrance and exits such that the forum and the gallery space exit immediately out of the building towards the plaza in front of the City Hall to the north. Next slide, please. So the Planning Commission decision, after extensive deliberations, the Commission concluded that they could not support the proposed modifications, citing findings related to sidewalk, design, signage, increased co-working space, and the public entrance. Next slide, please. So the options for the City Council for action today are 4. One is to continue the hearing and request supplemental report from the Commission, in which event the Council may extend the time for rendering the decision an additional 30 days. You could also approve the PC action upon finding that all applicable findings have been correctly made and all provision of this title have been complied with, or approve the PC action but impose additional conditions and or guarantees as it deems necessary to fulfill the purpose of this title, or disapprove the Commission's action upon finding that all applicable findings have not been made or all provisions of this titles have not been complied with. Next slide, please. So our recommendation is that the Council either approve or disapprove the Planning Commission's decision to deny the amendment to the conditional use permit and design review for the adaptive reuse of the vacant building at 4060 Hollis Street as an arts and cultural center. Resolutions approving and disapproving the Planning Commission's decision are attached to the staff report. That concludes my presentation. If there are any questions, both I and Chad are available. The applicant does have a presentation, which would follow as after your questions if you have any.
Colleagues, are there any clarifying questions for staff before the applicant presentation? No? So Member Bowders, go ahead.
Just on the list of options in front of us, is one of the options to reverse the Planning Commission decision with further instructions to the applicant?
I'm going to let the city attorney address that.
Thank you.
So basically you would uphold the Planning Commission's denial and then just give direction to the applicant as to what you want to see next?
I guess that's the question, is whether you have to uphold the decision to deny, or whether we could say we're overturning the Planning Commission with an exception to like what we wanted, but on the condition that X thing is changed. Like if the applicant was agreed to change something tonight, could we simply reverse the decision with the understanding the applicant is changing that thing with it?
Go ahead, Christine.
Councilmember, if I could try to reframe, the question may be, can the council approve the project with additional conditions of approval?
Yes.
And the council acting in its de novo capacity on appeal, can the council approve the project with additional conditions of approval?
Thank you for clarifying my question.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, that's my question.
Thank you. At this time, we will take the presentation from the developer.
Okay, I've recognized 3 presenters whose names I was given, and I'll open the presentation shortly.
Hello everyone, can you hear me?
Yes.
You can't see me, but you can hear me, that's good. Okay. My name is Nick Orton. I'm with the developer, Orton Development. We're an Emeryville-based company. And before we started, my dad, Eddie, and I wanted to congratulate Sharon and everyone involved with the Celebration of the Arts on another fantastic show. We were able to see it at the opening on Friday, and so I wanted to start with that. With that, why don't we get into the next slide in the agenda. So today I'm going to talk about why we changed the design, what we changed. I'll talk a little bit about the Planning Commission's comments and our responses, and then I want to end by talking a little bit about some of the comments we've gotten since we went to Planning Commission from the community and what we see as the next steps. Next slide, please. So why did we change the design? We had to. Next slide. Why did we have to? Well, we felt it was irresponsible for us to put the main entrance along Hollow Street where very soon cars will not be able to stop. We felt art couldn't be properly secured in the gallery. We felt the fire exiting could be improved. As Chad and Maru mentioned, we were over budget, and we felt that the overlap between the gallery use and the commercial use was operationally unsustainable. Finally, COVID really colored our thinking when we decided to redesign the project. Next slide. So what did we change in response to those problems? We relocated the main entrance along the north side of the building, which better connects the building to City Hall and makes drop-off simplified. The gallery and the commercial components of the project are now separate, so art can be secured and the gallery can be closed when the studios remain open. As you'll see on the next 2 slides, the fire exiting is simpler and improved. We've eliminated unnecessary costs like the cafe annex and most of the retaining wall on the east parking lot side of the building. The operations are much more sustainable, and we redesigned the HVAC with COVID in mind. I know some people are upset we eliminated the cafe. We understand a cafe would be a great amenity for the building. The fact of the matter is, we don't want to promise a cafe when it's very difficult to lease cafes right now, and there's a lot of vacancy in Emeryville, as council well knows. Next slide, please. So this is the original path of travel. If you were to go to an event in the Forum, you would enter the building either from the parking lot side at the top of the page on the east of the building, or at the bottom of the page between grid lines 2 and 3. You would go into a hallway, and then there's sort of a long hallway into the forum. This was a code compliant path of travel, but we felt it could be improved. So on the next slide, you'll see the new design. There's a lobby. It serves both the forum and the gallery. There's a direct exit to the north. There's a direct exit still on Hollis Street, and then there's a third exit that goes into the parking lot on the top of the page on the east side of the forum space. It also allows the two venues, the forum and the gallery, to operate concurrently and independently, so you can have one event in the forum and a separate event in the gallery. Next slide, please. So to recap why we think this is a better design, the two sides of the venue can operate independently. That is going to create lower overhead and better operations. The exiting's safer. It's easier to construct because unnecessary construction is removed, and there's better connections to City Hall. Next slide, please. So obviously we presented this to Planning Commission. They were vociferous in their opposition, and honestly we were somewhat surprised because the uses other than the cafe are the exact same, and the square footages are similar. Their main objections were, one, that the entrances were not as visible and accessible. They didn't like that we relocated the Hollis Street entrance. They thought it was less arts focused, and they thought the roof signs were too small. Next slide, please. So our response is we felt that moving the entrance was not just a design decision, but an important business decision. We felt there was a liability created by leaving the main entrance along a street where people could not stop. We felt that the new design could display more art in the gallery and forum because the exiting was so improved. And as Maru mentioned, there are also additional art studios in the new design. With regard to the signage, we think the building should be, rather than say, what it is. The 40th Street jewel box remains, which will display art. The Hollis Street side of the building will be lined with art. Our belief is that a more minimalistic signage approach would be better. At the same time, if council and the community feel like something more similar to our original signage plan would be better, that's not inconsistent with our vision for the Arts Center, and we'd be open to that sort of comment. Next slide, please. So after we went to Planning Commission, we had several meetings with the community, including with the Public Arts Committee, and we felt there were some misconceptions about what we were providing. So I wanted to make sure that everybody knew what was included with each studio. Every studio would be naturally lit either via window or skylight, and certain studios can be blacked out for visual artists and other people who don't need natural light. Every studio will have ample power and plumbing, individual exhaust, and full access to all of the co-working resources and the gallery and the forum. I also wanted to make sure everybody knew that we are turnkeying the forum and gallery spaces. They will be ready to rent, they will be lit, and they will have proper AV equipment. Next slide, please. So I'm going to give it over to my dad in a second to wrap up, but before I did that, I wanted to mention, we've talked to Vicky Jo Sol and other members of the community about more micro design issues, door sizes, removing one of the shear walls in the gallery to make it more open, and they were not pertinent to the Planning Commission's objections, so I didn't include them in the presentation. But I wanted to say that we are listening to the community. We have a different vision than some members of the community, but their input is appreciated and will be reflected in our final design. We really hope that you will all join us in building this wonderful arts center. And with that, I'd like to briefly turn things over to my dad before we conclude. Eddie.
Thank you. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
I don't have any slides. I'm sorry. I just wanted to remind you that we have been in Emeryville since about 1985, that we are a boutique developer, and what we do in large part is rehab and venues. That we have very happy public-private partners, including the wildly successful Pier 70 in San Francisco, the landmark Ford Building and Craneway in Richmond. And, I can fairly say that Oakland is quite satisfied with how far we've gotten in the development we've done with the Henry J. Kaiser Auditorium, which is not done, but people are pleased with how far we've been able to get and have good support. I want to remind everybody, this is substantially the same project we posed before. There are very small differences, okay? The problems are in two areas. The big area is moving the entrance off of Hollis. Now, to us, to our insurance companies, to our lawyers, and to our common sense, you shouldn't put the main entrance of a building where you can't stop. You're going to induce behavior that is illegal. So, and you're responsible for it because it's foreseeable. So, we're having a lot of trouble getting around that, and it's really in the power of the city to change that, but that's where we're at on that. The second one is there's a large movement in the city that really wants to see the city subsidize an art center. The direction we have is to have a self-sustaining art center. If you're going to have a self-sustaining art center, you're going to end up with something very close to what you're looking at. We've worked on this very, very hard. So I've been asking myself if I'm asking you to take a leap of faith. If there is a leap of faith, I think it's a relatively small one, based on if you've done any checking into us at all and what we've delivered for people. We can't be everything to everybody. And we ask you not to let the perfection be the enemy of the good. Whatever we do, we all know it's going to be way, way better than what's there now. And I really believe we have the potential of doing something truly great. So, like my son, I ask you to, overturn the ruling. We promise to continue to listen to the community, glean their best ideas, and include it in the project. And we will take under consideration. We will definitely accept if the signage is not inadequate and people don't like the signage. We're happy to resubmit on the signage. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Colleagues, are there any questions for the developer of the project? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing. The time is 8:29 p.m. And the public hearing is now open. At this time, I will ask the city clerk whether any comments have been received via the online comment card or whether anyone has raised their hand to make audio comments. And I'll remind those joining us on Zoom, just use the raise hand feature in Zoom to raise your hand. Or if you're calling in, please press *9 and that will raise your hand in the app. And I do see a couple of hands raised.
And Madam Mayor, I do have a comment that was submitted ahead of time. Oh.
Sherry?
We're on mute, Sherry.
Right. Hello, sorry. I do have one online speaker card that was submitted in advance by Vicky Jo Sewell, and she is on the meeting, but she has requested that I read her comment into the record. All right. I wish to comment about the council action on Art Center planning agenda. The studio rental part of the Art Center vision seems solid. I'm concerned whether we fully know all the associated costs around insurance and security. Who will lock the building up at night? As far as the co-working elements, do we have any good examples of similar things working well? It's hard for us to imagine the business plan for this activity. What will be the costs and requirements for membership? What will actually be provided in the space? Where will people plug in their computers, tools, etc.? Are group activities supposed to be arranged ad hoc? We see a strong need for a kitchen utility area. We feel a lot of the same way about the performance space. Just in Berkeley, there are more than 30 nonprofit performance venues. The area is quite rich in experience with what it takes to be successful. Many of them know exactly the issues involved. Have we made provisions for audio systems, for necessary lighting? If we don't want the thing to succeed, we should do what we have here, a large empty closet with 60 seats and no plan. Overall, I sense a confidence in the commercial aspects of the prospective Art Center studio and co-working components to be viable and self-supporting. Critically, I feel this confidence is missing in consideration of the Art Center identity and exhibitions plan. Again, what we have is an empty shell of a plan with the real planning pushed onto some future nonprofit. Believe it or not, art galleries and exhibitions are really important things. Museum studies and arts administration are legitimate fields of study offered by colleges and universities from JFK to Stanford. Most art centers focus their identity around a regular schedule of events and exhibitions. Lastly, I'd like to invite you to imagine your names above the door of the new Art Center, the John Bowders Art and Culture Center, the Ali Medina Art Center. In reality, the ownership lies with everyone that this council represents, the citizens of Emeryville. Please reject or delay this plan in favor of a more thorough and comprehensive plan. And now I will recognize Archana Horstig. And go ahead, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Wonderful. Good evening, Mayor Martinez and City Council members. After reading Nick Orton's email and hearing tonight both of the Ortons speak, many questions about the design remain for me. One is, what is the business plan for this art center? Income versus expenses. As you can imagine, this design has a definite set of limits it imposes on project income. For example, the number of seats, 60 or 61, I believe, in the performing area, would limit the number of tickets which could be sold for any performance. See also Nancy Karp's excellent letter regarding performance issues in the present plan. In any case, a vision which includes multiple sources of income and adequate planning for expenses, including staff, utilities, equipment, etc., on a yearly basis is needed. A design that reflects more adequate space for the gallery is paramount, and for the performing area. I agree with the Planning Commission that the earlier version at least left more room for those things. I therefore suggest that the City Council agree with the Planning Commission and send the developer back to the Planning Commission. If the developer can satisfy the Planning Commission, that would be good. If not, I would like to remind the Council that another nonprofit developer, a nonprofit developer, CAST, was basically tied with the Orton Development Group 3 years ago when Orton was chosen. I believe if no agreement with Orton is ultimately possible, then the council doesn't have far to go. So I thank you, all of you, for the hard work you've put into this never-ending project. But it's very meaningful to all of us who live here in Emeryville. You could see the excitement in the opening of the Emeryville art exhibition, and we were very happy to have that, and we wish we'd have a home of our own by now for that. I do hope that this all works out eventually, but I do think a better plan is needed. The more you think about it ahead of time, the better the project could become. I've noticed that other projects that CAST started 3 years ago have already been completed. So it is possible, even during COVID, to get these things done. So thank you for your patience and for listening. I so appreciate it. All my best.
All right, now recognizing Rick Tejada Flores.
Good evening, City Council. Hello?
Yes, go ahead.
Good evening, City Council members and the general public who are listening to this meeting. For those of you who are not familiar with my background, I served as General Manager of Public Station KALW and on the board of Intersection for the Arts and the Film Arts Foundation. I'd like to remind you that the original RFP for this project said that it should, quote, minimize city subsidy while ensuring fiscal sustainability of operations. Minimize. It did not require a project to be self-sustaining. Orton has acknowledged that the redesign was driven by economic issues, but as far as I know, has not provided financial data to prove this. The Planning Commission cannot take economic factors into consideration. The City Council can and should do so. Orton has identified co-working as a principal support for the Arts Center operations. Apparently, they do not understand the basics on which almost all arts centers support themselves, with grants and donations and earned income from membership, special events, auctions, endowments, underwriting for exhibitions, and sales. In fact, like all other essential public benefits we enjoy, public arts institutions cannot and should not be expected to support themselves with earned income. I discussed co-working in art spaces with Mr. Randy Robinson, who's the Executive Director of Intersection for the Arts. He said they tried offering co-working facilities, and although it generated income for several years, it has dropped off considerably, rather than increasing, as Orton projects will be the case. He estimates that Intersection lost $500,000 on the co-working process and feels that the co-working model is doing very poorly now. As an example of this, the only co-working space in Emeryville, WeWork, just closed. Socket Site is a real estate publication. It estimates that there are 17 million square feet of vacant office space in San Francisco and 4.6 million square feet of vacant office space in East Bay. Given this oversupply, it would be very hard for an Emeryville co-working space to be competitive. In view of all this, I urge you to reject the appeal. If Orton is not willing or able to provide what it promised, we should terminate the development agreement and start over. Thank you very much.
Does that conclude our public speakers, Sherry?
It does, yes.
Okay, very good. Then at 8:38 p.m., I will close the public hearing and bring it back to my colleagues for deliberation. And I'd like to call on Vice Mayor Donahue first as our resident artist on council.
As much as I feel we need this space for especially the celebration for the arts, I feel that the Planning Commission has correctly evaluated this design as not being sufficient. And I think that we should respect their judgment and go back to the drawing board, in effect. And we have this chance to get it right. And there's been some good ideas we've all heard, but we're not quite there yet. These are difficult times. Construction costs are high right now. I think we should listen to the Planning Commission and especially to the arts community, who you heard a couple of members speaking about their opinion. We need to have enough general support for this going forward, and I don't think we're there yet.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Member Bowders, would you like to give your comment?
Or Madam Mayor, I have a lot of mixed feelings about this item. In the fall of 2017, I sat down with the then city manager and city attorney and members of our planning staff and told them that in January of 2018, I wanted to, this is my first meeting at Mayor, I wanted to put this on the agenda and I wanted to pick this up and work on this and get this done. And that was a lot of lift of staff time. There's a lot of staff time put into that. And the public really engaged it. We had a blue ribbon panel commissioned of a group of people to help identify what features or attributes we wanted in an art center, how we wanted to define that space and make it community and culturally significant for the city. There were 3 applications that came in, proposals. We had a staff process for reviewing them. We had a council process for reviewing them. As one commenter noted, there were 2 applications that scored relatively similar, and this proposal from ODI was selected as a better match, largely actually for financial reasons, that the overall cost and the ability to generate revenue to help sustain the project was determined to be more viable than the cast proposal. And I've heard a lot of the public comments both here today and in the recent weeks and months about concerns that folks who are really committed to successful art center and who have lifelong experience in the arts have raised, and I'm really torn for a couple of reasons. One, everybody is pointing out all these business questions, and I appreciate them doing that. The hard part is that the application before us tonight is an appeal of a planning decision, and that the LDDA, which is, as Chad noted at the very outset of this agenda item, that's the business discussion. That's what the city council negotiates. It's not the purview of the public to negotiate the terms of our agreement or a pro forma. Those are things that we do in private consultation and closed session. I understand the public's interest in it, and I don't have any problem with the feedback they're sharing, but there's a lot of problems with just the iteration of this process where we're being asked to evaluate a building that will have essentially certain concepts baked into it, and then we'll have to, in our own space in closed session, go and negotiate the terms for how to finance that and make that sustainable. A lot of the things that we heard some of the commenters say. And so the planning decision and the business decision don't go hand in hand here today. And so for me, this is a really hard item because I, as one council member, have invested a lot of time in trying to fulfill this vision. And I think it's important to remind the community. It sounds great to say, well, there was another application, you can just go back to the drawing board. I don't know that this council would commit all the staff time all over again to another 4-year process of doing this. I think that's a presumption that members of the public have that I don't think they should make. I don't know that I would vote to do this again. I don't think I would endeavor to do an art center again if we don't do it. But that being said, I also don't believe in doing something that the community is not invested in. And what I haven't heard is community members say they want this. The Planning Commission has rejected it. The chair of the Public Art Committee has been silent on the item. The artists who have commented here today have all asked us to reject it. They're longstanding members of our community. So I'm going to listen to you, Madam Mayor, and Councilmember Medina, because I'm really torn, because if we walk away from this process, which I'm very open to doing at this point and upholding the Planning Commission, I think it might be a while before we revisit it for me. Thanks.
Thank you. Member Medina?
Yeah, I, similarly to my colleagues, am not feeling a great level of enthusiasm for moving forward this project at this point. My primary concern is that we would be creating something that's value engineered to the point of not fulfilling what the community wanted it for in the first place, and simultaneously setting ourselves up to have future budgetary requirements to keep it running, even if it's not optimal to members of the community. I'm concerned about, in this financial situation that our city is in, creating something that the community might look to and expect us to keep funding out of our general fund in the future, which I frankly just do not see us having the capacity to do. Like, I think we need to be really honest with where our finances are and where they're likely to be in the next 2 to 3 years. COVID has lasted far longer than most of us thought. It has hit us where we're weak in terms of having an undiversified budget that's very reliant on certain kinds of tax revenues. So we really cannot, there's no wiggle room for us to fund this if it doesn't work, and there doesn't seem to be the community support to make it work. And so I think there's been an enormous investment of time, but we've got to accept the economic principle of a sunk cost to a certain point.
Was that the end of your comments?
Yeah, that was it.
Sorry.
It was uplifting, sorry.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for bringing that up. It is true, the economic tail of the COVID-19 pandemic has not hit this city yet, and I can't stress that enough. Member Medina kind of lightly touched on it, but there are ways in which we have not yet recovered as a city, and we don't know when we will recover as a city. So this council is extremely sensitive to adding anything to our budget that will take away from our general fund. I, like all of my colleagues on council, am torn about this project because having been to the extremely successful and beautifully done celebration of the arts this year, and seeing that executed in a well-lit, very large space that's much larger than what's contemplated in our current plan, it was very redeeming and really, really great to see, and great to see our community be able to get together in that way. I don't want to give up on this plan, but I am interested in having the developer go back and reconsider specifically what is at issue. To me, I am less concerned about the entrance. I'm less concerned about the sidewalk. I am extremely concerned about how the forum space and the gallery space have really taken a step back from the former version that we looked at. And that's what I'm hoping that the developer would address with another pass at this. And I do think I'd like this to go before the Planning Commission again, because I really respect the work that they do, and I think that they made correct findings. But I will say, and if it were to come back to me, the weight I would give all of those different findings, it's the size of the forum and the size of the gallery space that are of the highest concern to me. And for what it's worth, I'm in favor of keeping those juniper trees. So, colleagues, having heard all of our comments collectively, is anyone interested or able to make a motion tonight that will move things forward, or propose another course that can give staff and the developer some clarity on how to proceed? So we've got resolutions for us where we can approve or disapprove what the Planning Commission found, which was their denial.
I'll take the hit. I'll move the resolution approving the Planning Commission's denial of the amendment. Do I have to read the whole thing?
No, I think that's clear.
Cool.
Colleagues, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, so that's 11.2.1. And barring any substitute motion, we can go ahead and take a vote on that motion.
Councilmember Bouders?
Aye.
Councilmember Medina?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Donahue?
Aye.
And Mayor Martinez?
Aye. Thank you, colleagues. Thank you, staff. Thank you to the developer. This is not an easy decision to make tonight, but I think everyone is still hopeful that we can proceed and end up with an art center. And not everyone's going to be happy all of the time, but we certainly would like to see it move forward. All right, so that brings us to action items. Item 12.1 is a discussion on allowing development bonus points for mass timber framing in construction. And I will cede the floor to staff. Welcome back, Maru, to present on this item.
Actually, I'm going to promote Nancy Humphrey.
Madam Mayor, this is an item coming from the Sustainability Committee, so Ms. Humphrey will be making the presentation initially, I think.
Very good, thank you. Welcome, Nancy.
Thank you. I'm not often confused for Miru, but it's a compliment to me.
Well, I saw her name. She's
I've got to clean the screen up.
Okay.
All right, is everyone seeing that?
Yes.
Yes, so good evening, Madam Mayor, members of council. I'm here tonight to talk about mass timber framing and to forward a proposal that came from the Sustainability Committee regarding more or less incentivizing or giving development bonus points for the use of mass timber framing in place of steel framing. Mass timber it's a catch-all term for large wood products, typically engineered wood products, but there may be some solid sawn heavy timber. Next slide, please. Most common kinds that you may have heard of are glulam and cross-laminated timber, which are both layers of wood that are glued together. The glulams are in parallel, and the cross-laminated timber are perpendicular layers of wood. They can also be nail laminated. Next, please, Sherry. Dowel laminated, mass plywood panels, which I don't know a lot about, but that's a type, and decking. So as I say, the most common types are the glulam and the cross-laminated timber, but they're all called mass timber. All right, next, please. Thanks. So this is an emerging field. It's not brand new. It's emerging fast, though. As of June 2021, there are 1,100 plus multifamily commercial or institutional projects, either in design or in construction or having been built. That's a 27% increase over June 2020. In California, there are 69 of them that have been built and 109 currently in design. And the reason, next slide, please. There are several types of benefits of using mass timber framing. The construction benefits include just-in-time fabrication and job site delivery, significantly less job site traffic, more speed and efficiency in construction, lighter framing requiring less concrete if concrete is even used, reduced job site noise. It's quicker and quieter and less impact on the community. Quality of life benefits of interior wood construction improves air quality by moderating humidity. It's got excellent insulating properties, including sound insulation. It offers good aesthetics, and some studies credit wood construction with lower stress levels for occupants. Next, please. The insulation is a key point, both for changing climate and for living near railroad tracks, let's say. Wood has excellent insulating properties in all manners. Next slide, please. Oh, yeah. Other benefits are that you're substituting high embodied carbon materials like steel. So there's a lot of carbon emitted, or carbon equivalent emitted in the manufacturing of steel. You're replacing that with a renewable resource. The manufacturer emits less carbon, and the material actually sequesters carbon. It offers a potential for synergy with forest thinning for fire prevention. That's not built into any of the code, but it is of interest in the building community. Next, please. So these are some data on really how big the differences are. Energy and production, see how much more energy it takes to produce steel or concrete, and how many fewer greenhouse gas emissions are produced by using wood instead of steel and concrete. Next. This is just like a cut sheet on one building that was recently built in Vancouver. It's actually the site where they took that first photo I showed you of workers sitting on the beam. And you can see some statistics here about that. There's almost 2,000 metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent stored in the wood. Additionally, there are avoided greenhouse gas emissions from not producing and constructing with steel and concrete. So there's a total carbon benefit that's very high. And it is structurally sound. It is sound according to fire measures, and it is accepted by the California State Fire Marshal as an approved construction method. So next. So the International Building Code added tall wood buildings up to 18 stories, depending on the construction type, into its code. That would not have been in California's code until 2023. So the California Building Standards Commission approved an intervening code supplement, which brought the tall wood building code into California code effective as of July 1st of this year. So it is now possible, legal in California, to build with wood up to 18 stories. Next, please. So the Sustainability Committee proposes adding a category of community benefits to the development bonus system that would apply to projects seeking development bonuses for either height, floor area, or residential density. They would get up to 50 bonus points for the use of this construction type. And the reasoning behind this proposal is that this is not a cost to the city. You know, some other ways to encourage this type of construction would incur costs to the city that we wouldn't be able to recover. This does not. It would simply be, an additional avenue by which to get development bonuses if the project needed them or wanted them. Next, please. So the proposal is that council consider initiating an amendment to the Planning Commission to add this category as a new community benefit under the development bonus system. And the process would be, if council elects to initiate such a change, that it would go to the Planning Commission for a public hearing. They would then review it and make a recommendation to council. If that recommendation were positive, then the recommendation would be to have a public hearing on the adoption of a proposed ordinance amending the planning regulations, specifically the development bonus opportunities. And that's all I've got, Sherry. Thanks.
Great, thank you, Nancy. Colleagues, are there any questions for staff before we take public comment? None? Okay, I'll check in with our city clerk to see if anyone has submitted a speaker card. I don't see any hands raised.
No, and there are no speaker cards either.
Okay, very good. I'll just remind the public that if you'd like to speak on this item, use the raise hand feature in Zoom, or if you're calling in, press *9. And seeing no hands raised, we'll go ahead and close the public comment portion of this item. And I'd like to bring this back for deliberation. Colleagues who serve on the Sustainability Committee, do you have anything to add with your insight on this item? Vice Mayor Donahue.
Well, I would just like to say that this would benefit Emeryville in particular, I think, partly because we're a small city and we're likely to develop more in the future than the average city. And the construction time being reduced would really be a benefit for our citizens. Like we're, living next to what looks like 4 continuous years of construction here where I live, namely the Lennar project, and then Biomed. Looks like there'll be a couple of years of that. And that's a real benefit. Also, Emeryville doesn't have any rock underneath our ground, so it's all what are called friction piles for our taller buildings. Well, if your building weighs a lot less because you use cross-laminated timber, it means that your foundations need to be less rigorous. So it compounds in Emeryville the benefits and makes it so that really there's dramatically less foundation needed for friction piles, and it wouldn't have to be as much. And so it makes a lot of sense, in particular for our city.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Member Medina.
I think at Sustainability Committee, we agreed that this is an easy environmental win. The use of cross-laminated timber, replacing metal and concrete. If you look at the staff report, there's a lot of great data about why. But also something that we can do with relatively low cost to the city to try to incentivize the use of these more sustainable materials. And so I think I strongly support this going forward to Planning Commission. My one note would be that probably to add some clarity about how the points would be distributed based on the height of the building. Like if you're doing great, full 18 stories of CLT, 50 points for Gryffindor, fantastic, but maybe less points for smaller buildings.
Member Bowders.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thanks to staff and members Donahue and Medina for working on this. I know Scott has been chomping at the bit for this for some time, and we keep telling him, wait for the state building code to catch up. And it has a date certain now, Scott, so don't worry, it's coming. I fully support the request to include this in the development plan, the development guidelines, but similar to what Member Medina just said, my caveat would be that rather than wholesale adopting it as equal to 50 points straight up, sort of like the net zero energy thing, I think that it would need to be calibrated in some way so that the point totals are commensurate with some standard. I don't necessarily, I would leave it to staff to propose to the Planning Commission several options perhaps. That might be my recommendation. To Allie's point, it could be that if you do a certain number of stories, you're eligible for a certain number of points. It may be that there's some other metric that I haven't had time to really evaluate or think about to determine what the point total is, but I'm a little hesitant to say you just get full 50 points if you build with CLT. I think that you could potentially get up to 50 points, but that's my only caveat. And I would note that the Brock Commons building that was displayed during the staff presentation, some of the pieces of it were prefabricated over several months off site, but that 18-story building was constructed in 70 days. I visited it in Vancouver. And so to reduce impacts on the community in terms of noise and construction, dust and movement, I think this is a really prudent thing to do. So I'm very open to incentivizing it in ways that make the other types of impacts, not just the energy saving and environmental benefits, but the construction impacts in the community, I think are also beneficial.
Very good. I'll agree with all of my colleagues and agree that more points should be awarded for more mass timber being included in each development. And the details are to be worked out, and the exact amounts of points will be worked out, but it sounds like we're all on board with initiating the amendment to the planning regulations. Colleagues, is there a motion to move in that direction in a second?
I move to support this motion.
I'll second.
So we have a motion by Vice Mayor Donahue and a second by Member Medina. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Bouders?
Aye.
Councilmember Medina?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Donahue?
Aye.
And Mayor Martinez?
Aye. Passes unanimously amongst those present, which is all of us. That brings us to item 12.2, and this is regarding our appointment to the Mosquito Abatement District. Colleagues, do we need a presentation on this? Okay.
Just can we know the date and time, Madam Mayor, that this meeting takes place?
I believe it's on the second Wednesdays of the month, but I don't know the time. Scott, you used to serve on.
Yeah, it usually would start at 5 or 5:30.
And I've just recognized Lorraine. Do you happen to know the time of day on those second Wednesdays of each month that the board meets?
According to our roster, it starts at 5 p.m. on the second Wednesday of every month.
Thank you.
While I am mayor, colleagues, I do have a conflict with the Alameda County Mayor's Conference, just to put that out there. But before we get into deliberating or discussing this item, let's see if there is any public comment. Sherry, has anyone submitted a speaker card for this item?
They have not.
All right, and I'll remind the public that if you wish to be recognized to speak to this item, you may use the raise hand feature in Zoom or press *9 to raise your hand. And seeing no public comments, colleagues, is there anyone who is willing or able or wanting to step forward and serve on the Mosquito Abatement Board? Otherwise, we're looking at delaying an appointment to the board until such a time that we can convince a member of the public to take on this responsibility for us.
Scott wants to do it.
No, I do not, because it is a little bit of a drive down to Hayward and traffic. But I just want to say that it's an important thing for Emeryville, and I really appreciate the service that Betsy Cooley did for our city for that. And that the mosquito abatement in our city has dramatically improved since Emeryville has had people sitting on this committee. And people at Watergate have been very appreciative about the lack of fly-off of mosquitoes from the sewage treatment plant directly across the way. And I've met numerous abatement specialists coming to really make sure the mosquitoes are not breeding in all of the places around Emeryville. So we've had excellent service, and it really has made a difference. And it would be important to get someone to do it. That's all I can say. I'm going to try to talk to some more people. I've tried to persuade some more people. I will continue to work on persuasion. See if I can get a member of our community to do this.
Very good. So it looks like we're moving in the direction of option 1, which is allowing this seat to remain vacant until such a time as another resident can be appointed to the board, in which case I don't believe there is any action that we need to take tonight, but I'm sure we each will be pumping up this board to everyone that we talk to in our normal course of business activities for the city. So I'm going to go ahead and close this item. And that will bring us to department reports. And we have an extensive planning commission report. Do we have our planning director in the room with us?
Yes, I am here.
Or to you.
Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the City Council. This is my monthly report on the actions of the Planning Commission at their last meeting. And actually, it is not that extensive, although there are 4 items listed on your agenda, all but 3 of them were continued. The first 2 items, the 2 residential projects on 64th Street were continued before the meeting happened, so we already knew that they would be continued. Unfortunately, the study session on the Marketplace redevelopment project was not able to be held because we did not have a quorum for that item. We had 2 absences at the September 23rd meeting, and 2 members of the commission were recused because of a business conflict. So we only had 3 commissioners left, and that was not sufficient. So that item has been continued to the October 28th commission meeting, at which meeting we do expect to have a quorum present to hear it. So that left the Bay Street grocery store study session, which the commission did hold. The commission had a number of comments, and there were also a number of public speakers, both via the online speaker card and via the raised hand feature. And there were also some letters that had been, or emails that had been sent to the commission prior to the meeting. Generally, I would say that the commission and the public all were pretty unanimous in their support of the proposal for a grocery store at Bay Street. However, a lot of people, including many of the commissioners, had concerns about the loss of the plaza at Bay Street and the surface parking that's proposed, as well as potential conflicts between pedestrian, cyclists, and vehicular traffic, and also the delivery proposals and a few other concerns. This project, as currently designed, will require an amendment to the Bay Street Preliminary Development Plan, the PDP, which requires City Council approval. Therefore, we have scheduled a study session for you on this project at your next meeting on October 19th. And that concludes my report. I'd be happy to respond to any questions.
Colleagues, are there any questions for our planning director? Okay, seeing none, we can move on. Thank you, Charlie. That'll bring us to future agenda item requests from council members. Does anyone have anything that they'd like to see on a future agenda? Vice Mayor Donahue.
I would like us to consider encouraging workers who have RVs and are doing construction in our city, who would be capable of parking on the construction sites instead of commuting, to be allowed to do so. There's just a lot, especially our union construction workers have to drive such long distances between various jobs. Sometimes they would really like to be able to stay in their RV on site. Ideally, on site would include an electrical plug-in so they wouldn't be using a generator. So I would like to explore this as this realistically should go before the, I guess, sustainability committee, because it's a sustainability issue. But I would like to have an ordinance that would somehow allow that and encourage that.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Please.
So you're proposing, you would like us to take up an ordinance or discuss a potential ordinance that would allow construction people to park RVs at construction sites and essentially live at the construction sites that they're working at?
Yes.
So how does that affect city services and liability for the city to have people living who are not connected? I mean, you're saying some level of power, but like, what are you, you're proposing like a whole live at the location? I'm just trying to understand.
I understand that. We just want to remember to keep it brief. It's just about whether it should go on a future agenda or not.
Right. I just want to know what I'm being asked to agendize.
Yeah, just to allow construction workers who are on the site working to be able to park their RVs at night.
Okay, he's answering my question.
So Scott, are you asking for for this to come to a city council agenda, or do you want a referral to sustainability so you can open up the conversation?
Well, I think that the odds of it, just embracing it, make a lot of sense. Maybe we would think of something else. But I would like it just to be possible discussion item for the council.
I think it's an interesting idea, Scott, but I don't think it's quite baked yet for the council. And I think it might take a little more investigation and time to consider.
Okay, well, I guess I'll take it up with sustainability.
I don't recommend referring it anywhere. I don't like the idea at all, to be honest with you.
Madam Mayor, if I could just weigh in, it would also be helpful to staff if you're going to start generating ideas that require significant staff time, if we can get a direction from the full council about that. So there's possibly a way that we could tee up just the item, not for substantive consideration, but for whether this is something that the council wants to dedicate staff time to research at this point in time.
I'm personally not in favor of dedicating staff time to this issue at this time.
I oppose the request.
It's a no for me.
Scott, if you come back with more information at another time, we just simply are not interested in having staff spend time on the issue, though.
Okay.
Thank you. Colleagues, any other requests for items on future agendas? I have a request that I've received to consider a resolution in support of NEM 3.0. So net energy metering is the process by which the homeowners are incentivized to get solar on rooftops because they're reimbursed for the solar that they produce. The CPUC is about to begin proceedings to consider possibly charging pretty big grid fees to people who are installing their rooftop solar. So it will take away incentives for people to be doing that on their own. A lot of environmental groups and other cities are getting in front of this by issuing a resolution that would be copied to the CPUC and our local legislators. So if there is any interest in seeing this resolution, that is something that I can provide to staff.
Sure.
Okay. All right, we're good on that. I have the resolution with me, staff, and I will forward that. Is there anything else folks need to see or would like to see on a future agenda? No? Okay, with that will bring us to adjournment. It is 9:19 p.m. and I would be remiss if I ended this meeting without welcoming back Councilmember Bowders from his long trek and the longest hike I've ever heard of anyone doing. And look, he's still alive and healthy.
I lost 17 pounds. But my hair is long, but yeah, 262 miles in 16 days and 7 hours, and I'm still alive.
Yes, you got enough water. You found sources of water.
There's plenty of water sources. Yeah, there were some difficult days. There were some beautiful views. I smelled like complete garbage by the end of the trip, but I got a hot shower at a Holiday Inn, and then I got on a plane and came to my parents for my mom's birthday is tomorrow.
Wow. I'm sure they're grateful you're in one piece as well. Well, thank you for coming home. Well, you're not home yet.
Thanks for welcoming me back.
Welcome back to civilization. And thanks everyone for attending and have a great night.